All right, we got our big official visit preview coming tomorrow. That's when we're going to be breaking down all the official visitors coming to town to visit Pitt this weekend. All the recruits who are coming in, they're actually going to start arriving tomorrow. These are Thursday to Saturday visits. A lot of times in the past, Pitt has done Friday to Sunday official visits. Most schools do Friday to Sunday, but Pitt, for the last couple of years, I think has done Thursday to Saturday. Either way, we could talk about why that is. It doesn't really matter today, but we'll have our big breakdown of all the recruits who are coming to town tomorrow, our big preview episode of the Morning Pitt. But between now and then, for today, I just got a bunch of random things, that I wrote down, 5 different topics that I figured we could just talk about. Not, maybe each of them I could probably stretch out into a full episode of the Morning Pitt, but you know what? We're just gonna jam them all in here and get five different topics, all sort of related to Pitt football, all sort of related to recruiting. Some more on the recruiting side, some more on the team side, some more on the holy cow, didn't think it could get any worse than that side. And we'll probably start with that one because sometimes I start going down these rabbit holes of sort of research during the week. So, sometimes it's related to the 3-2-1 column at the end of the week. Sometimes I'm working ahead on some different things. And I end up doing research and coming up with numbers. And I'm like, wait, really? Is that really the case? And I found some numbers this week that definitely qualify under the category of, is that really the case? So we'll talk about that here as a little bit of a preview for something we're going to do next week. And then we'll get into some recruiting talk, some quarterback talk, some WPIAL talk, lots of different stuff. We're going to bounce around a lot today, so let's jump into it. 5 different topics, 5 different thoughts here on the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Wednesday here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You know the website, Panther-Lair.com, the Pitt site on the 247 Sports Network. We don't need to waste too much time talking about that because you should know about it by now, particularly as we head into the big recruiting offseason, or the big recruiting season, I should say. And things start really heating up with recruiting here in June. We've got tons of coverage for you at Panther-Lair.com, a full breakdown of the official visitors, updates throughout the weekend, and then, of course, all the recaps at the end of the weekend as Pitt lands guys and gets commitments and players leave uncommitted. We get all the feedback. It's all right there at Panther-Lair.com. And if you check out right now across the 247 Sports Network, we've got a special promo going. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of the Pitt recruiting content this weekend or over the next 3 weekends, take advantage of this special deal right now. We got it on the front page at Panther-Lair.com. It's all over social media. This is a great promo, and it's a chance to get the best Pitt info and best Pitt coverage at a pretty good price. So go check it out, Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, what we always ask you to do, like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you can get all our Pitt video content. These daily Morning Pitt videos, Monday through Friday, our weekly live show that we do every Wednesday night. That'll be tonight at 8:30 p.m., with me and Jim Hammett and you talking about Pitt sports. We have post-game shows, press conferences, interviews, all kinds of stuff right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. You want to make sure you don't miss it. Like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. First thing I'm thinking about, and this is because we're going to write a lot about it next week, because next week is tight end week on Panther-Lair.com, and I should probably save this for next week, but I just can't get it. I'll probably dig deeper into some of these numbers next week when it is tight end week. Right now we're in wide receiver week, and I actually have a wide receiver thing that I want to talk about. But next week's tight end week, and so sort of trying to work ahead a little bit, doing a little bit of prep work and research for that heading into next week. I started tallying up all of the tight end production under Pat Narduzzi over the last 10 years of Pitt football, the tight end production. And when I say all of the tight end production, that just means that it's all encompassing. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a lot, because boy howdy is it not. And we all know tight ends have just been, it's a black hole position. There's just not much happening there. They haven't produced much for Pitt over the course of the last 10 years, really. But when you get into the numbers of what has actually come out of the tight end position since 2015, it's shocking. However you want to break it down. So Pitt's tight ends over the course of the last 10 years, 353 receptions. That's 35 receptions per season, or 2.75 or really 2.8 receptions per game out of the tight ends. That doesn't seem like very much. 422.8 yards per season, 33 yards per game. Receiving yards coming from the tight ends over the last 10 years. 33 receiving yards per game. 38 total touchdowns, receiving touchdowns scored by Pitt's tight ends over the last 10 seasons. 3.8 touchdowns per year. 0.3 touchdowns per game from Pitt's tight ends over the last 10 seasons. Now, a big part of the problem with the tight ends is they haven't been a big impact outside of a couple of seasons, but there was a real dip from 2017 through 2020. Over the course of those 3 seasons, Pitt's tight ends caught 3 touchdown passes. One in 2017. Wait, let me get the names. We'll take you down memory lane here. Chris Clark caught a touchdown in 2017. None of the tight ends caught a touchdown in 2018. They actually only had 10 receptions for 69 yards. The entire position group had 10 receptions for 69 yards. 2019, Nakia Griffin-Stewart caught 1 touchdown pass, and 2020, Daniel Marega caught 1 touchdown pass. And so you have 38 touchdown catches for the tight ends over the course of 10 years. Those 4 seasons produced just 3 tight end touchdowns. All right. 38 touchdown receptions over 10 years. Half of those, 19, came in just 2 seasons, 2015 and 2021. 2015, of course, they had J.P. Holtz and Scott Orndorff. Those guys combined for 9 touchdowns. And 2021, you had Lucas Krull and Gavin Bartholomew. Those guys combined for 10. So last 10 years, 38 touchdowns. Half of them, 19 of them in 2 seasons, 2015 and 2021. The other 19 touchdowns spread over the other 8 seasons, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 22, 23, and 24. Now, this past year, they did have 6 touchdown receptions, 4 for Gavin Bartholomew, 1 for Jake Overman, 1 for Malachi Thomas, and that was the third highest total of the Narduzzi era. The high watermark was 2021 when the tight ends caught 10 touchdowns, 2015 when they had 9, and then this past year where they caught 6. Part of that was due to the volume because that was also the second most receptions total. They had 57 receptions for the tight ends last year. That's the second most at Pitt over the last 10 seasons. The tight ends had 67 catches in 2021. So I think we all know that the tight ends haven't done much at Pitt over the past few years, or over the past 10 years, really. But seeing those numbers, or maybe just hearing them, and I'll have them in print for you next week, but hearing those numbers, God, it like I joked on the live show last week with Jim that I just don't even think about the tight ends anymore. I don't think about the possibility of tight end contributions, even though they caught almost 60 passes last year and 6 touchdowns. I just don't think about tight ends really contributing and having a role because for the most part over the course of the last 10 years, they haven't. Not much at all. So that's a good place to start, right? Official visits. This is my second topic. Official visits. Obviously, we're going to dig deep into the official visit weekend coming up. But, an ongoing sort of conversation, on Monday we had the Morning Pitt where we talked about does high school recruiting still matter? And it sort of dovetails with that of do these official visits still matter? I get if there's sort of a perception that, whatever commitments they get this summer or in June, half of those guys won't even sign with Pitt in December. And of the half who do, half of those guys will be gone in 1 or 2 years to the transfer portal. And I get that. But as I said on Monday, the bulk of the roster is still coming from high school recruiting. In high school recruiting, the bulk of the guys you get in high school recruiting are still coming from the month of June. 38 commitments over the last 3 years. 38 guys who signed with Pitt in the last 3 recruiting classes committed during the month of June on their official visits. This is still relevant. What's going to happen here this coming weekend when they have, probably 20-some guys on campus, and then the next 2 weekends after that when they have another 20 guys total over the next 2 weekends. They're going to build the bulk of the recruiting class out of these official visit weekends. And the recruiting class is going to build the bulk, recruiting classes are going to build the bulk of the roster. So it is still important. I think it's easy to sort of hand wave it away and say, well, I just don't care. With the transfer portal, guys are leaving all the time. Guys decommit. Your biggest contributors are going to be, transfers anyway. And I get that, and I fall into that pit myself. But look, we got Shadarian Harrison on the screen right next to us. We did a second ago. Now we have Jesse Anderson on the screen right next to us. And again, those are both high school guys that they recruited, guys they took out of high school, and they're going to play a significant role in the defense this year. And we talked a lot about, portal versus high school over the last 2 days, really. But it's still the foundation of your roster. You're still building the bulk of it out of high school recruiting, and you're getting the bulk of your high school, or you're getting the bulk of your recruiting classes from these June official visits. Kenny Johnson popping up on screen, another high school recruit. 17. It's either Bryce Yates or Tony Kinsler. I forget which one wears 17, but they're both high school guys, and they're going to be important. That's Justin Cook. He was a transfer. And sometimes I glance over and I see which guys pop up to see if they're I'm talking about them while they're, on screen. Sometimes it works out, but it's still big. Now, of course, transfers are significant as well. And my third thought here is just coming back to the quarterback topic, which we talked about yesterday and Monday a little bit. But it is remarkable to me that Pitt's leading passer, 5 out of Narduzzi's 10 seasons, has been a transfer. Or put another way, Pitt's leading passer, 5 out of Narduzzi's 10 seasons, has been a high school guy. Now, those high school guys weren't 5 different guys. It was Kenny Pickett 4 times and Ben DiNucci once, because, surprise to me, Ben DiNucci actually ended up being the leading passer in 2017. I thought Max Brown might have had the advantage there, in which case it would have been 6 out of Narduzzi's 10 seasons that a transfer led the team in passing. Instead, it was Ben DiNucci who just barely eked over 1,000 yards to finish as Pitt's leading passer in 2017. But outside of that, you had Nate Peterman in 2015 and 2016. You had Keaton Slovis in 2022, Christian Bayer in 2023, and Eli Holstein last year. So 5 out of the 10 seasons, you've had a transfer lead Pitt in passing. And in those 5 seasons, it was 4 different guys, as opposed to the 5 seasons where a high school recruit led Pitt in passing, it was 2 guys. And it was Kenny Pickett, really, for 4 years that made that up. And so I guess what I'm getting at, for as much as we talk about the value and importance of high school recruiting, and it still is, even at the quarterback position, there's no denying that when you look at Pitt's quarterbacks under Pat Narduzzi, it's Kenny Pickett or a transfer, pretty much. It pretty much boils down to that, and Ben DiNucci for like 1,000 yards in 2017. So you can throw that stat out to your friends at the tailgate. Be like, in Narduzzi's 10 years, the leading passer has been a transfer half the time. And of the other half, it's pretty much been Kenny Pickett. Fourth topic, 1,000-yard receivers. I saw somebody make a comment on the message boards. I think it was yesterday, just about Kenny Johnson, or it might have been on Monday that somebody said it. They were talking about Kenny Johnson. They said, he needs to live up to it. He needs to have 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, or I forget what the numbers was, but the 1,000 yards stood out to me because I started looking back, and do you know in Pitt history, there's only been 11 times that a Pitt receiver recorded 1,000 yards in a season. And it was actually 9 different guys, because a couple guys did it twice. Larry Fitzgerald did it twice, and Tyler Boyd did it twice. And so it's 11 different times, 9 players in all of Pitt history when there's been a receiver with 1,000 yards. And even more inside of that, 5 of those 11 seasons happened when Walt Harris was the head coach. And so almost half of the 1,000-yard receivers that have happened at Pitt happened during the 8 years Walt Harris was head coach of the Panthers. Now, what does that have to do with Kenny Johnson, Pitt's offense in 2025, Cade Bell? I'm not drawing many connections. I think the volume will be there in this offense to support a 1,000-yard receiver. Of course, the most recent time there was a 1,000-yard receiver was 2022 when Jared Wayne went over 1,000 yards, and they basically force-fed him about 1 billion passes in the regular season finale at Miami to get him over 1,000 yards, which they ultimately did, and it was a successful effort. But the volume played a role there. Certainly, volume has played a role in other points when there were 1,000-yard receivers. But if Pitt's going to do it this year, if Kenny Johnson is going to do it, or anyone's going to get to 1,000 yards, there's going to have to be a concerted effort to feed that wide receiver, which means one guy is going to have to stand out. One guy is going to have to emerge from the pack. When Tyler Boyd was a 1,000-yard receiver in 2013 and 14, he stood out. He emerged from the pack when Larry Fitzgerald obviously was a clear standout. Greg Lee in 2004, Antonio Bryant before that, Jordan Addison in 2021. Jared Wayne was a guy that got close, and so they threw him the ball as much as they could to try and get him over the hump. Kenny Johnson might be in that boat, and it might just depend on how close they are as they get to the end of the regular season of whether they try to help him build those stats. But it's interesting to me. It's been pretty unique for a Pitt receiver to record 1,000 yards. If Kenny Johnson does it this year, that would be that would put him in rare company because there are only 9 other players who have done it, and they've only done it 11 times total. So that would be pretty unique. All right, last thing, and we could probably do a whole episode on this. And quite frankly, I'm only bringing it up because it's sort of been in the news lately, or at least it's gotten the attention of Pitt fans, is recruiting the WPIAL. And some former WPIAL guys, either in the NFL or out, done with the NFL, whatever, have been speaking out about their experience in the recruiting process. And inevitably it comes up about their interactions with Pitt. And somehow everybody's got a gripe with the way Pitt recruited them. And the thing I would say, and the thing I have said, and the thing I've said for years now, I've said it on podcasts, I've said it on the message boards, I've written it on Panther-Lair.com. Anybody who will ask me, what do you think is up with the WPIAL and Pitt? I think to a large extent, Pitt gets held to a different standard. We always hear about the first to offer thing. Well, why did Pitt wait so long to offer this guy? They fell way behind. Okay, that's fine. Maybe you feel like Pitt should be the first to offer because they're a local school. And I think there's there's a separate discussion to have about Pitt, not wanting to offer a kid really young and then having to sort of walk away from that offer if it's a local guy, because maybe that kid doesn't develop the way they thought he did. If you're in New Jersey or someplace, and you tell some freshman he's got an offer, and then you kind of back away from it over the next 2 years because the guy didn't exactly develop, or he got a step slow, or he got overweight, or whatever it might be. I mean, whatever. It's not that big a deal. You can't really do that with local kids, or else you shouldn't do that with local kids. So if you want to take your time, it sort of makes sense. But the thing is, and we always see this, right? Like, Pitt should have been the first. Why wasn't Pitt the first to offer? These other schools offered. Why did Pitt wait so long? See, this is why they don't do well in the WPIAL. Okay, fine. But what about the times when Pitt is the first to offer? They never seem to get credit for that. It's weird how that works, isn't it? More often than not, when Pitt misses on guys from the WPIAL, those guys probably weren't all that interested in Pitt to begin with. And they look for reasons to say why they didn't go to Pitt, other than just like, I just didn't want to go there. I didn't want to play in the ACC. I didn't think they had great attendance. They didn't win enough games, or I just wanted to leave town. I wanted to get away from home. Like, you can say all of those things. It doesn't always have to be looking for, a reason to, that Pitt just didn't recruit me well enough. Really? I mean, like, I don't think that's the case. In a lot of these instances, there are some where they didn't offer a guy, they didn't offer Sky Moore, who went to Western Michigan, right, and carved him up in that game in 2021. Sky Moore's a really good player. Pitt should have offered Sky Moore. Pitt should have taken Sky Moore. But, like, that just makes Pitt like every other power conference school in the country. Right? And I know Pitt's the local school, so they're going to get held to a different standard. But at the same time, I think you have to be realistic about the situation. Because the reality is, I think there are far more local guys who shun Pitt and walk away from Pitt when Pitt offered them and tried to recruit them than there are, times when Pitt just kind of ignored local guys that it should have offered. You know what I mean? Like, but it's still... I just think there's so many factors that go into it with these local guys and with WPIAL kids that, I think it's always worth looking into why Pitt doesn't do better with locals. But I think it's also, worth considering that it's not always on Pitt's side of things that the relationship didn't develop the way you would have liked to see. So, it comes up every now and then. It comes up a couple times a year, it seems like, and it'll come up again this year. I mean, there are a handful of good FBS and Power Conference prospects in the WPIAL this year, and Pitt's not going to get all of them. They'll get one or two probably. And when they miss on other guys, we'll have this conversation again. But, I mean, this has been developing for longer than just Pat Narduzzi's time here. I mean, this has been going back. Dave Wanstead didn't get everybody in the WPIAL. And it's probably not going to change. Now, Pitt's been able to supplement their roster and fill it out by recruiting other areas. But we always have this conversation because Pitt seems to be, sometimes it just feels like guys are looking for a reason to leave. You don't need a reason to leave. You can just say, I just don't want to be in Western PA. I want to go to a different school. I want to leave the area, even if it's only 2 hours to the east. All right, we'll have our big official visit preview tomorrow to get you ready for the official visit weekend, tell you who's coming to town, who to watch on the commitment side, who we like, who we think could be really good, and all of that. So make sure you tune in, like this video, and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And check out the website Panther-Lair.com for all the Pitt sports news you can handle. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Don't forget the live show tonight at 8:30 p.m. We'll catch up with you there, and we'll catch up with you tomorrow for another Morning Pitt right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.